Welcome. This is Rebel Dharma. My name is Jason Murphy. It's Wednesday night. Glad you're here. Those of you in the room, those of you on Zoom. Just turn this off so you can see. We meet every week this time. Those of you who are here obviously know that. But we also post on YouTube. So this evening's talk will be recorded. And there we go. And then we post it on YouTube under the No BS Buddhist page. So you're welcome to check that out. So I have a bit of a topic tonight, and I guess maybe before we get into the topic, just to ask if there's anyone new that wants to introduce themselves, either in the room or on Zoom, first time here or new to the group.
I'm Derek. I'm new to this group.
Cool. How'd you hear about us?
I come to Mondays,
Uh-huh.
and then yeah, and this week it was a Wednesday. So
Great.
yeah.
Nice. Glad you came by.
Thanks.
And it's Eric?
Derek.
Derek. All right, cool. Jason, yeah. What about anyone online? Want to introduce themselves? New? No? All right. So we'll continue with a bit of the theme that I've been kind of working through. Now we're in the Dharma. I've been working through the Four Noble Truths into the fourth Noble Truth, which then opens up a whole group of teachings known as the Eightfold Path. And we've been kind of hovering about wise view and wise thought. Sometimes these are the teachings around karma and around just kind of recognizing the Dharma, the different kind of aspects of the larger view that Buddhism holds. And I'll expand a little bit on that tonight, but yeah, I'm gonna take a bit of a turn, and we'll see if we have time to get into that. Yeah, so let's go ahead and practice. We're going to sit for a little while, and so finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable. Um, what we generally do here, those of you who are new or are pretty recently joining this group, we sit for about 30 minutes, and then I open up for some questions or some sharing, and then focus on a topic. So finding a posture that's workable, that's sustainable, and if you feel open to it, allowing the eyes to close, maybe making any subtle adjustments to your posture. And then settling in. Perhaps opening to the comings and goings of sound. Sounds outside the room. Sounds inside the room. And the invitation is to let go of sound, allowing it to be in the background of one's attention. And perhaps shifting that attention towards the experience of the body sitting, noticing any sensations. There could be physical sensations, there could be emotional sensations. And then perhaps acknowledging to the mind, the process of thinking, the contents arising in the mind. Maybe even acknowledging if there's a particular mood. Good. And then perhaps making a commitment that for the rest of this meditation, there's nothing worth thinking. In other words, there's nothing worth kind of directing the attention away from here and now, staying connected to breath and body. So if you can, begin to aim the attention towards this experience of breathing. Tip the nose, rise and fall the belly, expansion and contraction of the chest. Wherever is the easiest place to connect to this present time experience of breathing. We're not trying to control the breath or do anything special with it. What you might find is that after a few moments, the attention, wanders off. Thoughts become more prevalent, or there's a sound, or some future or past thinking, story. It's not a problem. Just what minds do. It can be helpful to give the mind a job. It can be very simple, like just noting the inhale and noting the exhale, and using any simple language. One of the ways that I like, one of the instructions that I like is on the in breath here, And on the out breath now. Of course, recognizing whenever the attention may wander off. And with that sense of friendliness or kindness with the mind, aiming the attention back here, now, inviting the attention to kind of let go of whatever may have pulled off of the breath, and just returning with that sense of kindness or friendliness, recognizing this is a training. again and again. Just recognizing the present time experience. This can include sensations in the body, sounds arising, passing, even thoughts from a distance. Seeing if we can allow thoughts and sounds and sensations of the body to be in the background of our attention. As we allow this experience of breathing in the foreground as the meditation object. Utilizing the few instructions of here, now, perhaps there's another few words. The invitation would be to kind of expand from the breath, shifting awareness towards the moods or the contents of the mind, still from an observational perspective, kind of noticing what's happening here. Have the thoughts slowed down or sped up? Have they changed in theme? Is there sensations in the body? Just acknowledging what's present. Not getting too lost, not getting into the analytical, just the observational awareness of right now, it's like this mind, this body, this breath, here and now. right. So at this point, I guess I would just kind of open up for any questions related to the meditation instruction, which, there was quite a bit of space today. I didn't give a lot of instruction. Most everyone has some experience meditating either with me or on your own, or you've received some instruction. So just enough to kind of, yeah, give a little bit of guidance. So just opening up for, any meditation, Buddhist, Dharma related questions or about the instruction. And if there's nothing, I'll get into the topic.
And I'm like meditating by myself in my own space.
Mm-hmm.
Just sometimes when we meditate here, we're saying things like, I love you, I will always love you, I have always loved you.
Mm-hmm.
Things like I'm worthy, or what are some other ways or things maybe I should be doing while I'm meditating?
So, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're kind of asking of some other, so you're talking about repeated phrase. So kind of like using like what we call metta, or like that, this teaching that we've been, Noah's been bringing in, we've been doing since we were in Thailand, which is, I love you, I will always love you, I have always loved you, or something like that. I love you, I've always loved you, I will always love you, something like that, which can be generative around, I mean, the intention, I think, is to be generative around, kindness and connecting to that sense of kind of unconditional love for self. Um, and I want to say, like, that can be the intention, and that may not be the result. That what also can come up is the opposite, right? So, I love you, I have always loved you, I will always love you. Might bring up, all the reasons why that's not possible, or you're not deserving, or whatever, right? So that's, what I call repeated phrase. Um, and then you said something about like I am worthy, or like I'm worthy of love, or yeah, these are, sometimes people call them kind of positive affirmations. They're a little bit positive affirmation-y, but I think they're also around increasing emotional intelligence. Yeah. So that's what I understand you were kind of asking about. And then you shifted to, and is there other things that I could kind of focus on, or words you could say?
Like in the day long, we would do that, and then we also did more of a mindful, just like sensations in the body, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to just like focus on the breath, and which was kind of separate from like repeated phrase, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And is that just trying to find stillness? Like,
Yeah, so that's kind of what you're asking, right? Like, there's a differentiation between the two practices that you could feel that, and the answer is yes, there is. Yes and no. It's both and. What we did tonight was a little bit more present time awareness, kind of breath, but also not excluding anything in our experience. Maybe, well, I even was saying, like, you can even including thoughts, which can be really difficult to do because we emphasize our thinking mind so often. So the intention is to collect attention and to, yes, settle into the body. And that can happen whether it's concentration on the breath or it's concentration on repeated phrase. The thing about repeated phrase is that there's another layer there, particularly the way that we utilize it in this tradition, right? In the Vipassana or Theravadan tradition, which is that kind of generative, whether it's compassion or whether it's kindness or whether it's forgiveness or whether it's joy, or kind of trying to kind of generate that within our own hearts and minds, and then perhaps out, right? Um, where kind of present time or mindfulness meditation, or what's commonly called the vipassana, which is really insight, is really more about what we just did, which was this kind of, observation on an object. So I instructed you to kind of both look at and be aware of sounds and thoughts and sensations in the body, but really focus in on the breath as a point of contact to return to, right? And this, can be grounding, and it can really lead to seeing I don't know what other people experience, but one of the things that I often experience when I give or when I do the practice we just did is just the rapid arising and passing away of all fucking phenomena, of each breath, of each thought, of each sound, of each sensation, just coming and going and coming and going, and then the stillness that can be found amongst that. And that, so they both give a certain level of concentration. One is thought to be a little bit more emotional intelligence oriented, so kind of, and even the like saying something like, one of the phrases that I used for a long time is, I am worthy of giving and receiving love. And then, there would be the stories that would come. I would unearth certain things about my life or my experience or memories or whatever to that would come up as a way to dispute whether or not that was true. And then that's what I mean by generative. Like, that is purifying. That can be purifying. It's psychologically beneficial, cathartic even. And the other is also that way. It can also be generative and cathartic in a slightly different way, because there's less of a particular focus. It's really just about kind of present time experience, But there's a lot to be said for just the ability to sit with what is. Matter of fact, most of us can't fucking do it for very long. Like, just try, right? We just did. We tried for 30 minutes, and maybe there was moments, right? Or maybe there was 5 minutes. Maybe there was, I don't know. And that's actually less important of how long I could follow my breath or be aware of breathing without my mind going off into some story. That's less important than the repeated coming back with a sense of kindness, friendliness, reestablishing effort. That is way more beneficial, right? So is that kind of what you were asking? Yeah. And then the other, like, there's, just to kind of say, like I entered here now. This is present time experience. It's present time, but it's also repeated phrase. So there can be a benefit of attaching a few words, just because we're so, thinking oriented, that it's like a little extra. It's like just a little bit more attention to the experience. And if you're attaching a simple phrase, and there's lots of them, right? So in, out, here, now. One of the other things I was thinking about is, calm, relax. Sometimes I use that. Calming the mind, inhale, relaxing the body, exhale, calm, relax, calm, relax. And then the typical Thai forest example is called Buddho. And Buddho just means like awake. So it's like you're kind of telling your mind to be awake. You're telling your heart to be present, to be here, awake. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Anything else? All right. Well, then I'm gonna move into the topic for tonight. And like I said, we've been going over kind of entering into the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is the kind of complete instruction, kind of broken down step by step, or I should say, category by category of what leads to the liberation of suffering, right? So that's essentially the Eightfold Path. And I'm going to step a little bit away from, but not really, because it's all like the Dharma. You know, I gave this quote by Sariputta. Sariputta was one of the Buddha's kind of like top students, like head monk, you know, and he was thought to be, you know, fully enlightened and just very eloquent and very yeah, just very, very proficient at expounding on the teachings. And he gave this kind of quote, they gave this kind of analogy of as if all of the footprints of every animal on this planet can fit in the side and inside the footprint of the elephant, so too can all of the teachings of the Dharma fit inside the Four Noble Truths, right? So this is the that's of course including the Eightfold Path. So anytime we're talking about anything that has to do with the Dharma, we're talking about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, because it's all aspects of it. So what I'd like to do tonight is talk about happiness. Happiness, the path beyond suffering. And, you know, I created this topic, mainly because in this tradition, you know, there's so much talk about dukkha, right? About suffering. And it's like we get accused of being, you know, kind of addicted to suffering, you know. And, you know, some people, we do get quite attached to the idea of that we're suffering and maybe haven't found a way to move beyond that. And so I want to talk a little bit about the other side. So the word dukkha translates to stress, suffering, pain, distress, discontent, or impatience. So there's lots of kind of aspects of what we call dukkha from the Buddhist teaching. The opposite of dukkha is sukha. And sukha really basically means pleasure, ease, satisfaction. So it's a mix of, and there's actually two words that describe what we call happiness. You know? Sukha and sukhi. So sukha is the opposite of dukkha, which is this kind of, it's a pleasure that's like for a sense of contentment. It's more like content, easeful, and satisfied. So if you think about distress, discontent, and impatience, sukha is the opposite of that. And then sukhi is what we call happiness or well-being. So to get to this sense of happiness, you know, it takes work. This is the work of mindfulness. This is the work of this, you know, training the mind to be present and be, you know, somewhat accepting of the way things are, which is sometimes painful. The way things are is sometimes painful, and not, you know, not completely lost in or resigned that there's nothing that can be done about it, but to recognize that there is pain present. And that's, you know, that's the work of mindfulness. You know, it's not enough to just want to be happy. I hear this a lot, like, oh, I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. And then I can ask, well, what does that really mean to you? And often it's connected to wanting something, or uh, there's some attachment. If I had this, I would be happy. If I had that, I would be happy. Whether it's a job or a relationship or whatever it is, right? A certain amount of money, or didn't have to pay taxes, whatever. There's some kind of transaction that would need to happen. So just wanting to be happy won't make us happy. That this is, I think, where we could get a little lost, and I think this happens quite often, where people, you remember a few years ago, I mean, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Actually, it's probably like 10 years ago now. There was a wave called The Secret. It was like a video, and it was like manifest destiny, and do vision boards, and focus on getting things. And then if you the what's it called, the power of positive thinking, right? What's her name? Abraham Hicks, I think, is all big into this, right? And from a Buddhist perspective, that really just feeds the kind of the greed drive. It just feeds this kind of wanting, getting things to be happy, and it's not necessarily leading to this what is talked about in Buddhism as sukha, or freedom from suffering. And so one of the ways I think about this is that, I do think that there is a power in positive thinking. It can be generative, such as, kind of, I love you, I have always loved you, I will always love you, or, may I be free from suffering. This can be generative and creating some form of positive outcome, karmically, right? There's a purification that can happen, but it's not, and it doesn't take much to do this. But I do think that there are some people that can almost, the delusion is attached to, I have to kind of pretend. I'm going to block out anything that is unpleasant, anything that is a sense of stress, or difficulty. And I know people who live on the street and are mentally ill, that live this way, right? And it's the form of, I guess you could call it dissociation, or really delusion. It's living in a delusional state. And I think that there's a toxic positivity that's more widespread. This kind of toxic positivity of, like, sometimes I joke, I say, like, no bad vibes, like this. I don't know, I'd seen a meme about it or something once, and I was like, no bad vibes, never, ever? Does that mean you don't let it in? Because it's not like it doesn't happen, because it does happen. Now, there's a difference between shutting it out and fixating on it, right? So there's shutting it out is like, well, there's no bad vibes, so anything that causes any kind of negative experience, I'm going to avoid or not address, right? Versus, I'm going to fixate on everything that's negative in the world, right? Therefore, that becomes my reality, So, the power of positive thinking. So yeah, that this doesn't, this idea of the secret, right? The chances are that when you get something that you want, that it will lead to more wanting, more desire, more craving. So which fuels greed, which leads to suffering. So sukhi is a happiness that is sustained. This is a fixated, or a fixed happiness, a perspective of well-being that lasts. Now, this isn't something that gets talked about a lot. This idea that nibbana, ultimately, nibbana or nirvana, is an unshakable happiness. Or another way would be to call that contentment, right? That it's kind of like in the meditation when we can find that place of stillness within ourselves. And even though there are sounds and there are sensations and the leg is throbbing and the mind, may wander off a bit or whatever is happening, there's that place that remains still, calm, that can be touched back into. I think this gives rise to what is really meant here by Nibbana. It's ultimately Nibbana or Nirvana, or what we call enlightenment, is being unperturbed, not excluding bad vibes or negativity or challenges, but not allowing it to take us off of our center. This is a skill that's developed, right? And the idea is that it leads to contentment. So one of the ways that we begin, this journey to Nibbana is to see clearly this idea of past and future, which we spend so much time going over in meditation. Have you noticed? So often, there's a pull to the past or a pull to the future. And, this kind of wise intention of seeing clearly past and future are in the present mind only. Past and future are in the present mind only. They don't exist anywhere else but here and now. And so when thinking of past or present, where are we? We're here. And that's kind of why I was using that here, now, as a way to kind of, let's come back. And I don't know what was happening, but I'm 98% sure that where the mind went when it was not in the here and now was past or future. 98%. Sometimes it's like there's a sound, and then the sound has a thought, and then the thought, leads to what? A past thought or a past experience. So only in the present moment can we have a choice as to where we dwell. And this is what this present time experience, mindfulness-based, focus or attention is aimed towards, right? So one of the things I like to look at is kind of anger, right? So looking at anger, how do we hold on to anger, resentment, and envy? All conditions of suffering. So how do we hold on to it? Well, it's often hard for one to be both angry and happy in the present moment. So this idea of kind of that there's a choice. Sometimes it's not a active choice, but and that's what I was saying about the tendency. Like there could be a tendency where we can go like, oh, I'm holding on to this anger, or it's coming up, and maybe it's anger towards self, regret, remorse. There's a teaching in the Bodhisattva vow. It's part of the suttas. It's actually part of the sutras, which is more Mahayana. But it says this, if you will hold on to the sharp pain of the thoughts of anger, your mind can know no peace, no happiness, no pleasure. Sleep stays away and the mind remains unsettled. This is part of the Bodhisattva vow. So seeing anger or pain as an opportunity to practice compassion. This is what I think this kind of seeing clearly. Even though it comes up, the past or future, we can call it anxiety, you can call it, past kind of regret or anger, resentment, frustration, whatever. When we recognize it, can we meet it in the moment, here and now, with compassion? And this is one of the things that helps us to transform. And further into this teaching, suppose that without an ounce of effort, you came across a treasure chest hidden in your house. You should feel grateful for your enemies who aid you in your practice. is. So this is this kind of, suppose that without an ounce of effort, you came across a treasure chest. So when the resentment, when the whatever it is, anger comes up, we can use that as an opportunity to transform in this moment. So forgiveness is one, like forgiving, whatever, forgiving enemies, right? Not holding on to resentment. But it's not blind forgiveness. It's not like, I forgive you for everything. It's, as we often talk about here, I'll forgive you as much as I can in this moment. And there's also a level of forgive and protect yourself. There's certain offenses and or offenders that the idea is, can you, forgive the person, but not the act or something like that, right? Where we can let go of the anger or resentment but not put ourselves out in a way that is going to cause more pain or suffering for ourselves. Does this make sense? So one of the pieces that comes into play here is karma, is the teaching of karma. And this can be helpful in letting go and recognizing that I can forgive, like, let's say, like my stepfather. And so I'll give an example. Like my stepfather was an asshole, and he was a convict, and he was a lot of things, and he had multi-generations of suffering that really kind of passed down. And I have and can be in forgiveness and have a long time ago forgiven him for the ways in which he caused harm to me and to my family and my sister and my mother, just all of the different ways in which that intergenerational trauma played out, and have no desire, nor have I had any desire to have any contact for many years. So that's what I mean by, like, can we learn to forgive, but also set clear boundaries, and I think this is totally in line. And the idea of karma is to say that no one gets away with anything. That's this kind of, whether we're like, we have a generative drive, all of us, all humans have a generative drive. And the law of karma says the way how we kind of act in the world generates whether we're generating suffering, the karma of dukkha, or whether we generate sukha, the karma of well-being or contentment. So this teaching of, like, without any effort coming across a treasure in your house, you should be grateful for your enemies who aid you in your practice, because there's opportunities to forgive, which can be generative of positive karma. And releasing of emotional, you could call it baggage or emotional kind of suffering. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the treasure chest is the fact that you have these issues, troubles with your enemies. That's what you've discovered, this thing that
right.
You're transforming the perception of this thing.
Yes.
That has been, an illness to you.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
And then you now discover that they've given you a treasure because it provides you
this opportunity. Yes. Right. That it's it can be a transformational opportunity. That's what's, and this is in line with the teachings of Jesus. This is in line with the teachings of Buddha. Love your enemy and the practice of patience and forgiveness. This I think this goes across almost every religion. I don't know of a religion that doesn't have some level of kind of patience and forgiveness and love embedded in it. Of course, every It can all be distorted, right? As we see all the time. So the teachings of karma can be helpful. And as I've talked about before, there is a teaching known as kusala, which is kind of the generation or the generative sense of skillful, wholesome, good, meritorious actions. So they're characterized by a moral quality known as kusala karma, or good intentions, and is bound to the results eventually in happiness and a favorable outcome. And one of the best ways that, the Buddha gave, and we talk about all the time, and this is kind of, where we're at on my kind of list, is wise action, right? So what we call the precepts. And these precepts, oftentimes I call them ethical integrity. They're principles that we can choose to live by, that the Buddha set out as like an opportunity to generate positive karma for ourselves, or wholesome or skillful mental states, emotional states, and even presented out in physical states. I think about when I think about like stuff, and this isn't totally well thought out, but I was thinking about cancer, I think about IBS, I think about unresolved trauma, I think about when people hold on to negative experiences that they've had. And as a therapist, I see this quite often. I see people's resistance to letting these kind of things go. And I wonder, what is that generating? This kind of holding on or staying stuck in the hatred or the pain or the past, So the precepts there's 5 given to lay people that are non-monks. And the idea here is that they are guidelines, and to the degree in which we choose to follow them from the Buddhist perspective is to the degree in which we reduce suffering in our lives. And the first is to abstain from killing living beings. And this has lots of variations, but ultimately it's this idea of for one personally to abstain from killing living beings. And then the second is to abstain from taking that which is not given, right? So stealing, which, let's just think about these first two. Like if we agreed to not kill any living beings, including humans, would and animals, of course, would probably feel much more safe in the world. I've actually seen this when I've been to Spirit Rock Meditation Center, which and spent many times, and then even actually in Asia, and some of the more rural meditation centers. Well, I'll use Spirit Rock as an example, because Spirit Rock is this magical place where you go there and there's like wild turkeys that walk right up to you, and like lizards don't run away from you, and it's just very strange. Birds they know that for 50 years or something, so however many generations, and the most astounding is the deer that are present there every year, every spring, every winter, they're around, and that they're just unperturbed. They're unbothered by the human presence, because there's some intergenerational knowing that they're not going to be harmed while they're there. And, I think that if we just expanded that out to the whole world, like how much more safe this world would feel for all of us, right? So and the same thing with stealing. If the whole world, or let's just say Los Angeles, if just Los Angeles, committed to no theft, no stealing, no taking that which is not given, which is not offered. How much more at ease people might feel, how much less kind of paranoid people might feel. Just as an ideal, So the third, and then, each one of these, if we just think about just taking on one of these, what would that be like? And can we imagine a world or a society where these were really lived, So the third is to abstain from sexual misconduct. Can you imagine what the world would be like if everyone committed to not creating sexual harm to any other being? I mean, I feel like the type of trauma that I hear about and, work with people and have experienced myself would be eliminated if we really took this on. And then to abstain from false speech, how much more trusting we might be as a society if we weren't constantly having to discern, is this person telling the truth? Are they being honest? Are they full of shit? Are they just trying to manipulate me for something? Are they, talking behind my back? There's so many kind of pieces to this, right? To abstain from false speech. And then to abstain from intoxicants and harmful drugs. So this is, the Buddha kind of set this out as, okay, these are the non-negotiables. If you want to reduce suffering in your lives, you really need to look at these things. What's your relationship to killing? What's your relationship to stealing? What's your relationship to sexual misconduct? What's your relationship to false speech? And what's your relationship to intoxicants? So there's another piece. Well, I guess I'll kind of open up for any kind of thoughts or questions in regards to what I've been talking about, particularly around the precepts. Questions, clarity. They're pretty straightforward. Now, the thing about the precepts is that they're not commandments. They're not like do this or else at all. The Buddha was very clear, and I think most teachers, I would hope, are very clear that this is about choice. To the degree in which one chooses to follow these precepts is to the degree in which they will reduce suffering in their lives. And the experiment is to pick one that seems easy, pick one that seems hard, and really focus on it for a month. I had a teacher that, he's a famous teacher. His name's Joseph Goldstein, and he is a longtime, meditation teacher, and has a center in Barre, Massachusetts. And he took on the gossip or the kind of wise speech precept. And for one, he's, I heard him telling a story about this, right? As he was talking about precepts and his relationship to them. And so for 1 full year, he dedicated, he made a clear commitment to not talk about anybody that wasn't present in his space, like that he was directly speaking to. He wouldn't talk about. There was no gossip, no slander, no idle speech. And then he talked about how much he recognized how, there's so many opportunities to do something like that. And that he would be, just practice mindfulness. And in those moments, he would maybe remove himself if there was, some gossip or something happening, even, innocently, right? he would just not engage. And that it was for a full year, speaking only the truth and not involving in slander or gossip. And he said what he noticed is that there wasn't a lot to say. There wasn't a lot to say. So that's just one example, right? Maybe it's not killing, and I've worked with this in various ways. And of course, some people, this is why they become vegan, because they're dedicated to the not the preservation of all living beings, including animals. It's interesting, the Buddhist, there's a workaround because the Buddha wasn't vegetarian. The Buddha wasn't vegetarian, and many places within Buddhism, there is meat that's offered, and one of the aspects, or one of the workarounds, was that there can be no intentional killing for that particular consumption, right? Of course, it's problematic, right? As we have factory farms, and that was, and there's clean killing, or whatever. It's still killing. It's still, and when we are consuming for that which was intentionally killed for us. When we're consuming meat, I eat meat. I eat animal products. And there is the intention here, or the understanding here, is that there's a certain level of karmic momentum that we consume when we engage in any of this, and then again, to the degree in which we'll reduce suffering. We want to reduce suffering in our lives. The same thing can be true with drugs and alcohol, like this idea, or sexual misconduct, all of them, right? So taking one on, that's the experiment, if you can choose to engage with the conversation. Yeah. And, the way that the Buddha kind of ordered these things, he ordered, let's have wise view. Let's develop some, basic understanding of karma, of the law of cause and effect, of the benefits of meditation, of, I think that the Four Noble Truths. And then from there, let's begin to develop generosity. Generosity is the entry point. At the time of the Buddha and to today, a lot of people feel like they can't meditate. Or maybe they feel like they can't follow these precepts, for whatever reason. They have some challenges around that. So the Buddha's instruction was, okay, fine, don't meditate. That's okay. Okay, fine, don't follow the precepts, or maybe choose one that's easy and follow that, right? But following all five is my prescription. But, if you want to modify my prescription, see what happens, right? But you can still generate benefit, karma, positive karma, by generosity. And that everyone can do that. And that's kind of like the least, like effect, And so, I'm sorry, the least challenging. It's still challenging for people. I think we're in a society that really supports greed, supports miserliness, supports self-identification, and consuming goods as a way to find happiness, or at least temporary pleasure. And so the idea of generosity, other than Thanksgiving and Christmas, right, or is where at the time of the Buddha, and even today, it's like, okay, can we, and even like committing to be generous in some way, and that can be generous with time, it can be generous with attention, it can be generous with goods, it can be generous with services, like that's the bare minimum. So can we focus on, so that my suggestion would be like to just maybe make a commitment to and not like hardcore, like you're gonna burn in whatever damnation or something. That there's none of that here. But the maybe taking on the precept or the commitment to finding some way to be generous every day in some way. I really strive for this myself, just some way. And sometimes I'll be honest, sometimes my generosity is not being an asshole. Like I'm gonna commit to then interaction happens and I really could pop off and say something that was rude or disrespectful, and the restraint of that is my generosity. Sometimes I'm not even that good at that, but so anyway, so just finding some way. These are some of my thoughts around how are we creating less suffering and generating more happiness or contentment in our lives, following the precepts, being generous, and then meditating. And the reason why the Buddha, I believe that the Buddha ordered them this way, generosity, precepts, and meditation, is that many of us start to meditate and then we realize how fucking out of control our minds are and how we're plagued with all of the past, regrets, remorse, resentments, anger, frustration. When we get quiet, people say to me all the time, a lot of people I work with, maybe they have some trauma in their background or their history or something, and they say, I try to get quiet, I try to meditate like you instruct, or I listen to your meditations, and I just become so uncomfortable. I get so activated. And I was like, right. There's some kind of a protective quality there that we need to move beyond, And so one of the ways in which the Buddha was like, well, how do we begin to generate positive karma? Well, by being generous, by following precepts here and now, and then learning to meditate. And the mind is easier to settle when we're not generating negative karma or holding on to, but it is a purification process, there's work to be done. All right. So that's what I've got as far as this conversation for today. And I'm open for any thoughts, reflections, questions, clarifications.
So is the generosity thing part of the Eightfold Path?
Yeah, it's what's called is paramis, which means perfection. So it's part of the qualities. It's like an expansion of the Eightfold Path it's actually the 10 perfections. So which are also encapsulated in the Eightfold Path. So generosity isn't a factor in the Eightfold Path, but it's definitely a factor in the 10 perfections and in the 5 faculty, that's in other lists.
Fits in the footprint.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. So like Ruth, yeah, go ahead.
It's not on the subject of generosity.
Okay.
It's on the subject of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I just like to remind my people I talk to about suffering that the mind is not made for happiness. The mind is made to survive. Mm-hmm. Our bodies are made to survive. Psychologists will tell you that you're here live and stay alive. And so happiness is a skill. There's a Tibetan monk, Mathieu Ricard, who wrote a book, Happiness, Life's Most Important Skill. And so to
Happy
be
monk.
happy, yes, you must work at it as a skill. You can't just expect it to arrive, because we're not built to just be happy.
That's right. That's right. Yes. We actually, I mean, we have to really go against the instinctual nature, which is to hold on to that negativity. We have a negativity bias, right? And part of that's what I mean by it when I was saying, thank you for that, Ruth. When I was saying, you know, it's a protective quality sometimes when some of this negativity or the memories come up, because it's about not repeating the same, not like, you know, not trusting people is to not be harmed in the way that maybe one was harmed in the past, or, and that, you know, plays out lots of different ways, you know. So yeah, it is, it's counter instinctual. And one of my colleagues, Rick Hansen, Dr. Rick Hansen, wrote a book called Hardwiring Happiness, which is a way of really looking at scientifically and kind of neurobiologically and through meditative understanding of how to kind of create some changes in that way. And the monk you're talking about is famous for, I think he was on the cover of Time magazine. You know, he's famous for being studied over the longest period of time. He's one of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's, you know, disciples, or, you know, one of the monks in his clan or whatever, you know, Sangha. And yeah, and he's, you know, gone on to be a lecturer and write books and about the skill, the art of happiness, you know, that we have to work at. That's not just a given, you know. As a matter of fact, from the Buddhist perspective, the given is greed, hatred, and delusion. Yeah. Thanks for that. All right, so we're done for tonight. Thank you so much. We're out of time, and yeah, we'll pick this up. Talk a little bit more about meditative or contemplative. We'll just move through the Eightfold Path. So, of course, any donations, this center is run completely on the donations of those who attend, and, you know, Against the Stream could really use support. The suggested donation is $25 a session, which you can, you know, go through Venmo, Against the Stream Meditation Center, or there's a bowl here and a QR code. You can also go to the Against the Stream. You can go to the Against the Stream website, and there's a donation button. You can donate that way. And then if you want to support me and my teachings, also through Venmo, No BS Buddhist or Jason Murphy. Yeah, but I don't do this because I'm trying to pay my rent. I do this because it's an act of service, generosity, and it helps to support my practice. So let's just gather up all the goodness of our practice, and may this goodness be dedicated to the freedom from suffering for all beings. May all beings be free.